Helge Ivar.
Ja, H6 Gustav Helge Ivar. Hej, tjena, det var inte igår. Nu gjorde du mig alldeles, vad heter det, ja, inte nervös kanske, men det var skoj att få höra det där. Du, 559, hoppas allting är väl i Finland, Peter. Och 6 GHI är M2D.
Ja, tack Mats. Det är fantastiskt. 5-9-10-20 dundrar in som vanligt. Och underbar audio. Till molniga mulna Jakobstad. Jag har väl en cirka -2 eller någonting bara. 60 centimeter snö. Riktig vinter med det här. Hur har du det där?
Jag skulle vilja säga att det är nästan likhetstecken på allting där. Vi har nog kanske någon grad över 0 just nu, men vi har 60 centimeter snö också. Men när jag kom hit för första gången efter mitt senaste Mongoliet-äventyr, det var runt den 6, ska vi se, vi var på semester 2 veckor, ungefär 6 februari, då hade vi runt 100 centimeter. Sen blev det blidväder och det här 100 centimeter. Lite hårdare så att det krymper, men det är nog fortfarande vinter ett tag till. Jag skulle tippa på minst en månad.
Уезжать на краткий хоризонт, я ответ. Уезжать на краткий хоризонт, я ответ. Спасибо, пятерка девятка вам, 5-9. Николай, из Днепропетровска на приеме. Спасибо, Николай. Киржет, Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки для диплом, Сельский монастырь, прием.
Was over in Pakistan in one day, and within the same day he was back in the United States. We can go anywhere in the world where it used to take you years and sometimes lifetime to do it, to travel from one end of a country to the other. Just stop and think. Can you imagine traveling from the East Coast to the West Coast back when you first found it, when all they had was horses and walking, and it would take them months. It would take them months. Now you're there in a matter of hours. And as far as the world, men can hear, men can see, men can perceive. These are
本月以来的第3轮大
방향을 일으켰고 많은 사람들이 그들의 현상을 알고 싶어 했는데요. 그래서 그들은 아침 커플이라는 명칭의 페이스북 팬페이지를 열었습니다. 그리고 4개월째
Тамара, 1 Тамара. Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки за диплом. Сельский монастырь, прием. Ujana, кто Ujana? Роман, 5-9, искатель Зоя. 5-9. До свидания. Киржет, Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки для диплом. Сельский монстр. Прием.
Ульяна Борис, 3, Игорь, Елена, Сергей.
УБ-3, Игорь, Елена, Сергей, 5-9.
Добрый день, 5-9, очень громко, плюс 10 децибел, Женя, Евгений, Брянск. Всего хорошего, пока-пока.
Пока, до свидания. Киржет, Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки для диплом. Сельский монстр. Прием. Всем, Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки для диплом. Сельский монстр. Прием. 7 на 20, Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Y Тамара, 1 Тамара. Очки для...
Well, what a hell of a place to do it there. Info.
Everywhere, as we do day after day, the prophets sent to proclaim and to announce to the world that Walter Barrow. 007. Won't you write this with? Dash 0007. Won't you write this week?
So we can know this, that these remas, which I have tried over the years to try and get some of you to follow along, but these remas are the...
Postal code is 29488. Six, 8, 9. The
00 Zulu. Wind 210 degrees, 12 knots. Visibility 6 miles. Light snow, 2,000 scattered. Ceiling 4,000 overcast. Temporarily 0700 Zulu until 1500 Zulu. Visibility 2 miles. Light snow. Ceiling 2,000 broken. 3,000 overcast. From 15...
Pretty cool, Mom. Very nice airport opening and flying with your wife. Let me get us back. Let me stop for a minute.
There is a very famous person monitoring us, and he's and I've been texting. W5JI, are you going to say something? And when you do, send it over to Tom, and you'll stay in the rotation. You can talk to middle-aged Texo. W5JI, W5FP. Well, he's not going to talk, but he's texting and he's listening. VK4BR, W5FP. See,
no, I hit the damn button and went off frequency.
Oh, well, go ahead. I didn't understand what you said. Good evening, all. And Tom, give me a rundown on what the problem was with your amp. Was it just a control board over?
Good morning, Judge. It would appear to have been a combination of, I think there was a fault. And when we looked at the old 40X1500 underneath, you could see a little black split. And I mean very, very tiny. And I don't know what the split means, but you can see a crack there going down on the ceramic part. And it's possible that there's been an internal problem. And when it blew up, luckily it took out the control board, but you didn't take down any of the power supplies or anything like that. So we put the new tube in and we've restored it back to the original condition, which is running the Chinese tube. And after a bit of frigging about, it came good. And I put it in the car last night and drove home non-stop from Sydney to Brisbane. Apart from that, a few little stops for an hour or so. I was so tired. And I guess in the previous 36 hours, it only had 2 hours sleep. And it caught up with me yesterday afternoon when I was sitting in the chair in Sydney. And I started to nod off, which isn't hard to do. And then I got a bit excited when he said the amplifier was ready and we raced around nearby and I picked it up, put it in the car and then headed off. So anyway, luckily, apart from the control board and the tube, and there was a bit of, you can see where there was explosions on the control board and a bit of carbonizing on different parts. I may have been fairly lucky. So I'm on the new tube at the moment, Joe. Before we go on, I'll say good night to Bob and Bob. And great to hear you guys. It's terrific signals. Bob, you're sitting on 15 over terrific signals. And Bob, the VOB, you're 5 and 9. And I see it's over 2 years since I worked for VOB. In January 2020. Time's moving on. I'm going to put it away. Poor old Wayne Food's been left out in the cold. And he probably has to go at the other game. VK4 X-ray Golf's company. This is VK4VR.
Okay, and where'd you work them? I worked them on 28405 SSB.
Wow, that's pretty good. Okay, Stan, it's all yours. Jeff is on frequency waiting for you, so you might want to give him a call, but I'll catch you later.
Okay, very good. Yeah, it's John Philippe, and he was not very strong. He was about 5'5", gave me 5'5", but he wasn't working anybody else in the U.S. It was pretty cool. He was working a couple of Europeans. And I snuck in there. I said, let me try the hex beams, and he came right back. I almost fell on the floor. Over.
Yeah, well, you got a good set.
God says, Adam, from every tree. He says it, I give you permission. You don't, I won't tell you which.
If you partake of him, you...
Very good, Tom. Thank you for all.
You got it. K5. Yeah. The other issue is how do I take off that? Because when there is like a message comes in, it does get over the remote amps. How do I stop that?
Well, you need. Well, I sent you a little note about that. Did you read the note?
I read the note that's done about the mixer, but I don't know how to get in there to do that.
Well, I showed you where it was, and you just need to turn down the volume on your sounds or take the radio out of the mixer path.
I still don't know how to do that.
Well, it comes in the user manual for Windows 10.
The what?
Something you never heard of. Just kidding, the user manual. There is no user manual. It can be tricky, but I could do it for you.
Is it going to affect anything else, when we do that?
Well, everything's is all related. The easiest thing is on the mixer panel, just reduce your sound coming from the computer so it doesn't get into the mixer.
Yeah, because when I have that issue when the computer starts talking, it comes up on WSJT. It doesn't happen too often, but when I don't know what triggers the talking, but it's bad. Did you notice some sort of interference on FT8 on 40 this morning? Some sort of background interference?
I wasn't on that long, so no, I didn't really notice anything.
Where it has some big red now. Was that a different version, or that was something?
ShortWave.com page, there's two horizontal, and then there'll be two horizontal 30 feet below it on a separate rotor connected to the Sky Needle tower, over.
Yeah, now my question is, how do you operate you got two up there right now, so what do you have, separate controls for each antenna? You can turn them separately, or do you turn them both at the same time? How does that work?
Yeah, I turn them at the same time. They're on a 60-foot boom. The boom is aluminum tower sections, 60 feet long, and there's a hex beam on the end of each one, and I turn the whole tower, the whole boom section, over.
Yeah, very fine. Now, when you and now you change the bands. If the band change to the stepper antennas, what I'm saying is, I guess, when your band change, you have a.
Every tree in the midst of the garden, but the tree, that one tree right there.
Donde se evalúa el estado de cumplimiento de los acuerdos ante el octavo Congreso desarrollado en abril del 2021. A la comitiva se incorporó la víspera Roberto Morales Ojeda, miembro del Buró Político y secretario de Organización y Política de Cuadros del Comité Central del Partido, quien conoció, entre otros indicadores, el remarque de los programas agroproductivos que se desarrollan en áreas de la empresa agropecuaria Guatemala del municipio de Mayarí y sobre la distribución intercalada de las siembras para obtener mejores resultados. También, como parte del recorrido, Rogelio Polanco Fuentes, miembro del secretariado y jefe del departamento ideológico, visitó la unidad de base empresarial agropecuaria NIPE de Cueto, donde constató el funcionamiento de las máquinas de riego que beneficiarán a más de 270 hectáreas de cultivos. Noticias nacionales en Haciendo Radio, 6 minutos.
Noticias internacionales. Venezuela y Rusia potencian acuerdos estratégicos bilaterales. El ministro del Petróleo de Venezuela, Tarek Al-Aizami, y el viceprimer ministro de Rusia, Yuri Borisov, firmaron acuerdos de cooperación bilateral estableciendo más de 20 áreas de trabajo potenciadas por la Comisión Intergubernamental de Alto Nivel Venezuela-Rusia. A esta hora también les confirmo Edward Snowden, el exagente de la Agencia de Seguridad de la CIA, que reveló en 2013 la existencia de programas de espionaje electrónico masivo en Estados Unidos, afirmó que la avalancha de noticias falsas respecto a una invasión de Rusia a Venezuela, con fechas y horas exactas de la ofensiva incluidas, forma parte del plan de la Casa Blanca para desviar la otra cuestión que implica directamente a los servicios de de urgencia. La potencia que la prometida invasión no sea materializada, tal vez podríamos echar vistazos a la historia que está pulgándose cuando la Casa Blanca se vio repentinamente dominada por un misterioso e inexplicable deseo de cambiar el ciclo de las noticias, escribió Snowden en su cuenta de la red social Twitter, junto con el enlace a un artículo del diario The Washington Post. Noticias internacionales. Seguimos juntos haciendo engaño.
Comenzó en deporte el gran aconteciendo en el Gran Slam de Israel. De los que se presentaron por nuestro país, solo una competidora pudo lograr una victoria. Les comento que en la división de los 41 programas
recibe Miguel Barnet, distinción de la Universidad de La Habana. El escritor y biólogo cubano Miguel Barnet recibió el titulado y el doctor honoris causa en letras de la Universidad de La Habana, en ceremonia efectuada en la aula magna de esa institución docente. La rectora de la unidad estudiantil, doctora Miriam Nicado, dio lectura a la resolución que distingue al destacado ensayista, autor de la emblemática obra Biografía de un cimarrón y estudioso de la transculturación de las religiones de origen africano en Cuba. Culturales en Haciendo Radio.
Las informaciones se suceden momento a momento. La atención es permanente. Estamos haciendo radio. El presidente cubano Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez intervino de forma virtual en la Conferencia Internacional para la Financiación de la Reconstrucción de la Península Sur de Haití. Ofrecemos esta intervención de manera íntegra.
Su Excelencia Ariel Henry, primer ministro de la República de Haití. Excelente señora Amina Mohamed, vicesecretaria general de la Organización de Naciones Unidas. Distinguidos invitados, nos convoca otra vez la urgencia ante el drama humano que vive Haití. La nación más pobre de nuestro hemisferio, una de las más urbanas por su ubicación geográfica ante las catástrofes naturales que con dolorosa frecuencia impactan al Caribe. De los golpes de la naturaleza bastante. Se habla menos como para esconder culpas de las reales causas y las dramáticas consecuencias del abuso colonial y postcolonial de las potencias imperiales que le hicieron pagar por más de 200 años la osadía de ser la producción liderada por hombres negros, hasta entonces esclavos, la primera república independiente de nuestra América y la primera de todo el continente en abolir la esclavitud. La tierra que inspiró en nuestro Alejo Carpentier la idea de lo real maravilloso y una obra originaria y extraordinaria como el reino de este mundo, sobrevive a las escuelas de tiranías militares que tiene de toda la comunidad internacional. Una enorme deuda con su pueblo trabajador, tal cooperación sustancial y desinteresada a Haití. Y no solo para la reconstrucción, sino
the streamed Winter Games ever, with 2.23 billion minutes consumed. Officials with the IOC said Beijing 2022 Games are also the most digitally engaged Olympic Winter Games to date. According to statistics provided by the IOC, as of Wednesday, 57 million people have visited the Olympics website and app is a record for the Winter Games. For more on this, on the line, veteran of Ever Sports, Mr. Dong Jun. Thank you, Dong Jun, for talking to me again.
Great to be back to your show, Quinn.
Thank you. Now, first up, how do you look at the figures? I mean, is this surprising at all?
Honestly, I didn't predict any figures, so I'm not quite surprised. But without denying that is a gigantic heard of in the history of Winter Olympic Games. That's for sure.
Well, in China, have tuned in for both, the ceremony.
Well, I believe a lot of people, most people like me, are still awed by such a big figure. And, we struggle to figure out what was actually behind them. And it takes some professional analysis, I believe, based on further data to be released officially by the IOC, as well as the China Media Group. And also professionals need to use scientific models to get some very convincing answers to how come. But, kind of assume playing host to the Winter Olympiad for the very first time ever is way different from watching it played out in another country. And has consumed billions of dollars, millions of manpower, and more than 6 years of preparation. So it's really worth
all that money.
Also, and also undeniably that free gamicity has been going on for quite some time. And the Chinese public tend to follow government-sponsored and promoted mega projects and take pride in them. And that's part of the Chinese contemporary culture. And other contributing factors may include, it's coinciding the Spring Festival, the Lunar Chinese New Year. Yeah, I think it's a satisfactory answer to almost all parties.
Indeed. Well, it certainly looks like this is as the Chinese would say, a win-win result for a lot of people. I mean, as I said earlier, the viewership released by NBC Universal, which is official broadcaster of the Olympics in the United States, is pretty big too. I mean, the U.S. government previously staged a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Games. However, a Pew Research report from earlier this month found that more than 90% of the American adults had heard little or nothing about the boycott. I mean, when we compare the fact that the majority of Americans are not even aware of the boycott and the fact that so many people tuned in for the broadcast of the Olympics, does this mean that the boycott is making little influence on American viewers of the Beijing Games?
Well, I'm not sure that I am so familiar with the landscape in American media, from traditional TV to online viewership. I wish I could tell, Liu Kun, but I'm not sure about this because, we also understand that the Western public, from America, maybe to the UK and some other countries, maybe not as many people in terms of proportion of the nation really paid attention to the Winter Games at all. Although we also see some record statistics reported from America and some European countries. I mean, they are obviously or presumably to be among those fans of winter sports. Of course, based on overall among Americans and countries over the last 10 years, the number of people who express their interest or passion about winter sports have already exceeded that for the summer games. Not necessarily the case for China yet, but now with 300 million people already have tried some skating or skiing sports. I think that's already a huge number, and we will see, the ratio between. But when it comes to the American viewership or how aware they are of their government's decision or attitude toward Beijing's hosting of the Winter Games, it remains to be seen. But we also understand that indeed traditional media has been facing such challenges of trying to get the attention of the public, competing again, while seeing the slump of TV viewership of the opening ceremony and some other competitions. But Peacock, as part of the NBC system, also enjoys record viewing. And I think it's more like more than a political issue,
Indeed.
but rather,
well,
the evolution of American media.
Perhaps we have to wait for a few more days or even months to see, how this will play out. I've been talking to Dong Jun, veteran journalist and of Ever Sports. Still on the Winter Olympic Games, Beijing 2022 is aiming to become the first ever carbon-neutral Olympic Games. That goal is being driven by a large number of hydrogen-powered vehicles. Xu Hua spoke with Liu Yang from energy equipment company CIMC Enric Holdings to find out more.
From the torch to vehicles and refueling stations, China is taking actions to produce a carbon-neutral Winter Olympics. The hydrogen-powered torch was lit on February the 4th, and it has to keep burning throughout the Winter Olympics. But it's not so simple to ensure that it burns reliable in all weather conditions and withstand strong winds and extreme low temperatures.
To ensure the continuous and stable burning of the torch, Winter Olympic Games Beijing, Sam's Eric had provided more than 30 hydrogen transport tube trailers, more than 10 self-hydrogen storage cylinders, and one self-hydrogen cylinder dedicated for the receiving of torch.
Another eye-catching model is the deployment of more than 1,000 hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, which is a dramatic leap from 126 at the 2010 Shanghai World Expo and 3 at the 2008 Beijing Olympics. The cold weather and high altitude in Zhangjiakou and Beijing is a challenge for new energy vehicles. To resolve this, China's oil producer and leading supplier of energy equipment have built hydrogen refueling stations for the venues.
Parts, pipes, valves are made of stainless steel to meet the requirement for the use in extreme low temperature environments.
Due to the high cost of production and insufficient structures, hydrogen refueling stations, the hydrogen energy industry chain is still in its infancy and far from being in large-scale commercial use. China aims to achieve peak emissions in 2030 and carbon neutrality in 2060. The Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics could be a watershed for the accelerated implementation of hydrogen energy in China.
You're listening to World Today. Coming up, we'll take a look at the current COVID wave in Hong Kong. For further discussion, follow us on Twitter. We are CGTN Radio. Stay with us. Stay with us. Stay.
This is Michael Zhang. Greetings from Los Angeles of the Golden State of California. Thank you today for making me part of your team. I truly enjoyed the debates we had and look forward to more in the year.
Hello, I'm Gloria Cid, First Secretary of the Embassy of Chile to China.
Expert Views, presented by an award-winning team. Today, keeping you well-informed, up-to-date, and ahead of the news.
You're listening to World Today. Hong Kong is facing its toughest fight yet against the coronavirus. From just around 100 new daily cases at the start of this month, that number has increased exponentially to over 600 on Thursday. As the city maintains its zero COVID infection goal, hospitals and quarantine facilities have been stretched close to their limits. To meet increased demand, the government has set a goal to raise the city's daily testing capacity from 100,000 tests to 200,000 this month. On top of tightening social distancing measures like reintroducing a two-person limit in public, Hong Kong officials have met with officials and experts in Shenzhen to seek help.
For that, but I see that it's got this indomitable. I also see that this is Hong Kong's healthcare system has been overwhelmed, and that's been in the media. There is kind of now decade living and working in China, and so this huge debate. But But experts have said, at least I've read this in the media, that there's going to be 28,000 daily in a surge, and there's 9 people that have died from the virus, and this is all within the last 24 hours, including a 3-year-old girl. So, as you were saying, the city has some of the toughest virus restrictions in the world, and that's affected, I think, people traveling in and out of China, in and out of Hong Kong, and from Hong Kong into mainland China, and this has really affected business, so we all want to get past this, but it looks like that's not the case here.
Well, from the end of the 4th wave last April, Hong Kong, has been doing pretty well on this. I mean, the city had mostly seen imported infections, and daily caseloads were usually in or low double digits. The current 5th wave of local transmissions was started by air crew members, including 2 who flouted quarantine rules upon returning from overseas. I mean, how do things, get out of control so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. That's a big question. And I think, there was Chinese New Year research for family gap. Of course, when you have this 5th reasons, would be foreigners or whatever that would be coming, that we're flouting these rules. It's very difficult, I think, in Hong Kong. It's very difficult in mainland China. Although in Hong Kong, with the older population, it's reported that, that there has been a lower level of vaccine with that demographic. And again, putting that together with Chinese New Year might have caused problems. But this city is an Asian financial hub, and should be a driver for these kind of things. But now it's become isolated. And it's becoming a difficult situation from an economic standpoint. So if they don't take these stronger measures, like Xi Jinping said, like Carrie Lam has said, then I think that things aren't going to get better.
Well, one more question, Doctor. Now, we previously said that the Chinese mainland will try to provide, food supply and also medical goods supply. And also, recently we just heard that a group of experts on pathology from Guangdong are going to Hong Kong to offer help. I mean, what more can the Chinese government, both national, Chinese mainland government, both national and local do?
Yeah, I think that even during the Olympics here, President Xi has said that the Hong Kong government must mobilize all power and resources to take the necessary measures to control this outbreak. And, Carrie Lam herself has said that she's, that the chief executive officer are going to mobilize all available manpower and resources and adapt all necessary measures. I don't know how much more necessary and what else can be done, because these are some of the strict, like I said, in the world. But I do believe in improving testing capacity, like I talked about earlier, building treatment and isolation facilities, and receiving medical and other supplies from mainland is going to be beneficial, because right now Hong Kong is in a bit of an island. If we mainland now, we're subject to restrictions in quarantine, and so people don't want to come back and forth between the two places, which has made this much place than it was in the past.
Well, do stay safe and healthy, and thank you for talking to us today. We've been talking to Dr. Edward Lehman, Managing Director of Lehman, Lee & Xu Law Firm, joining us from Hong Kong. This is World Today. We'll be back after a short break.
Very much for a chance for me to communicate to the world progress in China's accomplishment, and also China's rich cultural heritage, and of course China's desire to integrate itself into the international community. I believe today opens a window as well as builds a bridge between people in China and the world.
You're listening to World Today. Europe's top to uphold of law. The ruling was final, shoots down a lawsuit by Hungary and Poland. It also provides ample legal
城之死，但其人到底是被何方神圣暗杀，是大可揣摩之事。在这之前，大宦官陈洪被新宰相李训杖杀，陈弘志曾涉入美进谏，他在备位任凤阳节度使。王守成任神策军官军龙使，虽表面尊贵，其实是被剥夺了实际兵权。而这一切恰恰是郑注用幕僚王师文之际苦心做的安排。郑注知道文宗皇帝要铲除宦官，王守成会首当其冲，他费尽心思将王室名声暗降，调其离开京师，原是想保对方一命，却不成想王守成竟然在践行宴会上遭人毒害。王守成仇家众多，即便当日有资格出席宴会者也有许多人。郑注怀疑李训更文宗皇帝授意，他想不明白的是，王守成已经交出兵权，皇帝何以一定要取他性命？当年宪宗皇下手者是大宦官陈弘志，王守成因是太子心腹，亦卷入其中。文宗皇帝对怀恨多，但明眼君职这一宫廷后日，太子生孤念云。文宗皇帝想要为祖父复仇，何以不杀郭太后？当真是个没担待的皇帝。当年宋申锡一案，郑注便早看了出来，知道文宗为人反复，不足以辅佐。但等到他真的有机会亲近君主，沐浴皇恩的时候，却为名利所诱，又将一切都抛诸脑后，彻底忘记。
由时代播讲的《无畏中国历史大案探奇录》系列《甘露之变》正在播出。
The Poland against the conditionality mechanism, the conditionality regulation, basically, and they protested to that, saying that it goes against the principles of the Union. And the sovereignty of their respective member states, so that the Union takes more powers than it was delegated by the member states to it. To put it simply. And so the court ruled against both Poland and Hungary. The problems that are associated and why the conditionality regulation is proposed to be used by the European Parliament, and the European Parliament is actually pressuring the EU Commission to use this conditionality regulation, is the two sets of problems. One is that the Poland have been perceived as eroding the rule of law in its justice system, so gradually subjudicating the judicial powers under the executive power in Poland, meaning that the executive power would take a lot more control over the judicial power, and that means that it can influence the judicial decisions, thus eroding the rule of law. And in case of Hungary, it's a complex issue where you have the constantly increasing authoritarian tendencies of the government that establishes a lot of control over the media, is accused of corruption and influencing the justice system as well. So the combination of these factors are perceived as the erosion of the rule of law in Hungary as well. So it's they're a little bit different in the substance, but they aim at the same rule of law principle that should be upheld by the member states.
Well, you just mentioned, you know, the part of some of the central controversy surrounding this, you know, sovereign mandate. I mean, Polish, the Justice Minister of Poland actually said that too. He said, you know, the EU is limiting, you know, the sovereignty of member states. What's your take on this? What do you think? Who should be above? Which should be above which?
I think that of course there are going to be, in such a situations as the European Union, there are going to be always a debate about how much sovereignty the member states are actually delegating to the Union. But I would say that this argument that coming from the Poland and Hungary is a bit weak, because when they joined the European Union, when they ascended to the European Union membership, there was a very clear picture that the Union is going to be progressing in terms of unification. So to say, more and more powers of the Union are going to be taken basically from the state, from a member state. So to say, centralization of those processes was inevitable. And when Poland and Hungary assented to that, they basically gave their consent to the limitations on their sovereignty. So I think that any step that the Union takes is actually more than they bargained for, seems very weak, because that was the whole process, that was the whole idea behind the European Union, that it is going to be at some point more and more unified, more and more mechanisms for the member state.
Well, we are kind of running out of time, but very briefly, do you think the ruling will because of the controversy in this, do you think the ruling will in any ways influence the unity of the European Union?
I do think there's going to be a resistance, especially from the states like Poland and Hungary, but maybe some other European Eastern members, to the limitations of their sovereignty. But I don't think it's actually going to affect the unity of the European Union to any substantive extent. It's probably going to be another hurdle in the process of the unification of the European Union. There might be other processes that are challenging to the unity, but not this particular one, no.
Well, thank you. We've been talking to Kamal Makili Aliyev, affiliated researcher at Raoul Wallenberg Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law in Sweden. You're listening to World Today. Stay tuned.
I am Alka Acharya. I teach at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. Today has organized its programs and its stress on bringing in a lot of views from all over. It is an extremely good platform for information and analysis, and I wish it all success in the future.
You're listening to World Today. U.S. producer prices increased by the most in 8 months in January. The producer price index jumped 9.7% in January compared with the same period a year ago, and that's on the heels of 9.8% surge in December. Meanwhile, the consumer price index rose 7.5%. Prices of services, food, and motor vehicles were the main drivers for the high inflation rate. For more on this, my colleague Zhao Yang earlier spoke with Morris, Professor of Risk and Finance at China's Tsinghua University.
So first, the U.S. PPI jumped by 9.7% last month. So what do you think are some of the main reasons behind the high PPI figure?
As you mentioned, there's a few sectors have been noticeable or were pointed out for being noteworthy. One is hospital outpatient care, but also the cost of food and motor vehicles. Those components were particularly important in driving the higher PPI figure. Across the board, though, as a general matter, really there are problems, or the inflation problems are probably more associated with supply chain bottlenecks and labor shortages in a time where the U.S. economy is demonstrating increasing demand for goods and services. So with this increasing demand and the shortages of certain goods and services, it's not surprising that we have this inflationary pressure.
And the CPI also hit 7.5% in January, a record high in 40 years. But how did the U.S. market react to it, and how does it hit the small businesses?
I think that it would depend on who you ask regarding how the market initially reacted somewhat badly. It saw this as negative, a negative that the inflation rate, the CPI change was 7.5%, and indexes by a couple of percentage points the first day, and then again the second day. But I think that more recently they have come back up and made up at least about half of the amount that was lost. So if you ask other people, they might say that the inflation figure didn't bother the market too much. Overall, the inflation reports are higher than what was expected by investors, but not substantially higher. And so I think that
that people expected inflation to be continuing. They're a little concerned that, as I mentioned, that it's higher than expected. And certainly this is a concern for people in all parts of the economy, consumers, small businesses. The PPI increases. Other people are saying that that's too much and it will be a shock to the system if they do that. I would expect a 25 basis point or 50 basis point increase is, of course, to keep inflation under control, but the other is to make sure that the economy remains robust.
And so, management professor Anthony Cruz, the term described the rising discount in the United States. So how would you explain this phenomenon?
It's the Great Resignation. Another term that I've heard is the so-called big quit. And I think that it's a remarkable phenomenon. But I think that there is unhappiness among workers in the United States, and that this is why they are leaving the workforce. Some have compared it to implicit stress against employers in general for better working conditions, wages, ability, and so forth. Comes as a surprise.
Journalist from Pakistan, based in Tsinghua University, he initiates current affairs by including experts from across the globe. I've always enjoyed our thought-provoking discussions and theme and impact.
Participate in all this and